Hello. In these days of a surge in the pandemic, I hope you and yours are safe and healthy. The numbers of sick and hospitalized remain as high as they've been since March 2020, and so our vigilance remains important. Vaccinations continue to prove themselves effective, but while our children cannot yet be vaccinated, we will mask and follow protocols to keep them safe. And there's growing consensus that if you're elderly or in any way particularly vulnerable to the virus, you'll want to get your booster shot soon. The days feel heavy now. There's so much that's not as we would wish it to be. From the humanitarian crises in Afghanistan and Haiti to the wildfires in the west to the hurricanes in the east, to an economy that can't flourish so long as the virus does, to a rocky beginning of school across the country. We feel the weight of these days. And these feelings come as we observe the 20th anniversary of the September 11th attacks. All of us of a certain age remember that day clearly, as if it were yesterday. We remember the disbelief, then the shock and the horror. We remember the heroism and the anger. We remember a country scarred but healing. After 2 decades, we remember what we lost, and we hope what we've gained and learned. Now, as weighty as much of this is, my aim's not to be a downer today. My aim is to remind us of the importance of remembering. As we're 18 months or so into the pandemic, remember and acknowledge those losses and griefs and frustrations. But remember also how far we've come, what we've learned, and opportunities we've found. As we emerge from the pandemic, and we will, taking stock of the steps, positive and painful, along the way is key to emotional recovery. It's a part of our journey as individuals and as a community. Some of the most important remembering we do is at God's altar. We celebrate this memorial of our redemption, O Father, in this sacrifice of praise and thanksgiving. Recalling his death, resurrection, and ascension, we offer you these gifts. And then take them in remembrance that Christ died for you and feed on him in your hearts by faith with thanksgiving. The fancy word for this kind of remembering is anamnesis. It's the opposite of amnesia. We don't forget. Each week we recall to mind and heart God's mighty acts for us, including raising God's own Son from the dead, so that death no longer has power over us. And the other place where we invoke our sacred memory is at the baptismal font. There we recall God's creation of the world, God's deliverance of God's people through the Red Sea, Jesus' own baptism in the Jordan River. As we welcome someone into the household of God, that is what we all remember ultimately, is that we belong to God, that we are marked as Christ's own forever. We remember who we are and whose we are. And even when we feel the weight of the world, that God's got that whole world in his hands.